A nesaf, rhowch groeso i'r llwyfan, please welcome to the stage, Aelod Seneddol Dwyrain Caerfyrddin a Dinefwr, Member of Parliament for Carmarthen East and Dinefwr, Jonathan Edwards.
Well, gyfeillion, mae'n anrhydedd enfawr.
It's a huge privilege to be able to speak here again in Llangollen. Since last year in Newport, the general election has been held, and I'm very pleased to say that the theme has increased by 33% with the election of Ben Lake for Ceredigion. For paying tribute to Ben, the great contribution that he's made to the group in Westminster. He's fully committed to this job and does considering work on Twitter. I feel tired on his behalf. The San Steffan group is very happy, not just because a number of our portfolios as MPs have reduced from 6 to 5. The clean leadership of Liz Savills, the work and to defend the benefits of Wales in London. I'd like to pay tribute to the forensic work of Howell Wenders on the Brexit Scrutiny Committee and the far-reaching work of David Wigley in the House of Lords. We're very lucky with the research staff, Ocean and Gulamali. If one thing raises my heart as a nationalist is the talent of the next generation. In June, we succeeded in keeping the seat, which is Carl Dye, Susan Howard, and the two Rebeccas helped to keep the seat, and having these two as county councillors and their so locally, during the wonderful work during the local 18,000 were canvassed in a month, and the biggest number. Many of those were fortunate to serve as party and Wales as elected members can only do it through your work, and this is something which you all need to remember. Because no individual is more important than a party and Wales. Over the last few weeks, I'm afraid to say that one or two individuals have forgotten that and have decided to do damaging things to promote their own benefits. We must not become a demagogue. The only thing that elected members should do is what promotes the Welsh national interest. And if we look for a good example, then we can only turn to our dear friend Steffan Lewis, AM for not South East Wales. His is something that he really inspires us. Despite his recent ill health, he pushed his continuity bill in the assemblies, and because of his strength of his argument, even UKIP supported his measure. In any political context, that is a national leader. We all wish Steffan well in his fight against cancer, and we look forward to welcome him back to address the party in the next conference. I'd also hope to wish very much to Councillor Alison Davis, who also has cancer, and he is watching the conference from his house. I also take advantage of this opportunity to welcome councillors in Carmarthenshire, while the local Labour Party are arguing in favour of closing 500,000 of cuts from the Welsh Labour government, while the Welsh Labour AMs are opposing the Llandeilo bypass. The Plaid Cymru is moving on. And the Councillor Emmons is doing extremely well in this portfolio, and Llandeilo. And the Plaid Cymru is investing in its infrastructure that will support the economy in the county and this portfolio particularly during the housing portfolio. Turning now to the party, we will face a challenge following the Brexit vote. In the months and years coming, the fate of Wales for decades will be decided. Our duty now is join and fight for Wales in electoral terms. We're only 3 years away from the next National Assembly elections, and we must focus entirely on the ambition of ensuring a result that will enable Plaid Cymru to lead the next government. If Wales, another Labour government, fifth in a row, will be extremely damaging to the government of Wales on several levels. So have a new party is essential to democratic government, and Wales is suffering from having one party in power for over 20. Some symptoms are malicious. They're running out of steam and lazy, clearly, and the Labour just wants to govern Wales rather than lead our country. What we need is a radical, forward-looking government, not a Labour. Some symptoms are much more serious, such as the tactics that are used by the Labour in Wales. One of the main failures is that the Quango state has been system by patronage government system, and the same sort of dictatorship used in other ways. In the next elections, in the next assembly, then we must seize the reins, move Labour out of the way, and govern Wales for the benefit of everyone in Wales and all parts of Wales. Think we're familiar with the economic speeches of Plaid Cymru politicians criticising this. We're worrying that the Labour government in Wales will make the same mistake with putting all the resources in one part of that country, South East Wales, and also the way they run public services is disgraceful. They give their responsibility to their cronies on the health boards, and they wash their hands of any unpopular decisions. We cannot allow our country to be misruled for another 5 years. We need a new government, and the challenge that we face over the next 3 years is totally clear. We must go to offer a different government to Wales. If there's any hope of succeeding, we must join and promote a message and challenge the unionist parties.
Brexit is the political equivalent of an incendiary device which is reshaping the critical context in which we all operate. As a party, we have some very serious thinking to do.
Unless something completely unforeseen happens, a Tory or Labour government will take the British state out of the EU. They are both also committed to leaving the single market and the customs union. This will create some uncomfortable decisions for us as a party. Do we position ourselves as a reformist force within the British state, fighting for a confederal structure of a partnership of equals between the four governments of the state, and join forces with pro-Europeans to secure and win a new referendum? This would have the advantage of a more evolutionary political position, but would mean parking independence indefinitely, considering the position of the European Union to Catalonia. Do we stand on a position whereby we make the case that independence for Wales is the only way of achieving a future for our country within the European Union? This would have the advantage of linking our chief political aspiration with the European question, which could be potentially transformational, as is about to be the case in Scotland. However, we would need to explain in the case of regulatory divergence with England how we would avoid a trade border on Offa's Dyke, although according to the Prime Minister's own assertions, there will be a tailor-made solution for Ireland. It is our position post-Brexit that we will forget our European aspirations and campaign for Welsh independence from the British state, but create a joint internal market and customs union, a mini-EU for the former UK? Or would it lastly be the Boris Johnson vision of an independent Wales free to pursue its own regulatory policy and strike autonomous international trade deals? Personally, I think we should rule out that last one, but these give an idea of the sort of dilemmas we now face, and I probably haven't thought of half of the permutations. I often say that the British establishment never lets a good crisis go to waste. And despite the shambolic handling of the negotiations with the European Union to date, and the existential threat that the British state now faces, the Unionist parties have a razor-sharp focus on using Brexit to re-establish Westminster control. In her very own words, the Prime Minister wants to strengthen the Union. As I said recently at Prime Minister's Questions, Wales faces becoming a defenceless rule-taker, a vassal country. We really are entering uncharted territory where Brexit is being used as a means of settling old scores. Anti-devolutionists are using Brexit to neuter the National Assembly. Peace on the island of Ireland is being jeopardised by those who never supported the Good Friday Agreement. The DUP campaigned against the agreement during the ratification referendum, and some of their current MPs, and indeed their party leader, left the Ulster Unionists partly in protest at the brave decision of David Trimble to make peace. Time after time we see the DUP tail wagging the Tory dog, and the hasty decision of the Prime Minister to sign a confidence and supply agreement after the election last June will, I believe, ultimately come back to haunt her. The DUP's narrow view of British identity guides all of their actions. Irish and European identity, in their view, is a direct threat, and they will favour Westminster rule over the restoration of the Northern Ireland Assembly because they can't even bring themselves to support an Irish Language Act. No wonder the DUP and most extreme Brexiteers are trying to rubbish the agreement that brought peace to Ireland. The only problem with their strategy is that direct rule under the terms of the agreement could lead to joint sovereignty over the 6 counties between Dublin and Westminster. The DUP ultimately has a veto over the British government and on Brexit in particular, as we have already witnessed. As we enter the next crucial and detailed stages of the negotiations, the question must be asked, what could possibly go wrong? The DUP is not the only party that is using Brexit for narrow political purposes. The Labour Party is using the current situation for one purpose only, and that is to force an early general election. Following last June, I immediately called on the Labour Party to use the new parliamentary arithmetic to help deliver a softer Brexit. By calling for single market and customs union status, it could easily have guided the government towards the only policy that could command a parliamentary majority. The Prime Minister is hemmed in by the deep divisions in her own party, but is primarily unable to move because of the opaqueness of Labour policy. Their only aim, to their shame, is to create the political space that could lead to an early election by enabling them to vote down any deal. 2 parliamentary flashpoints await us. Firstly, the forthcoming trade bill, where an amendment calling for a customs union could defeat the government. If this was to happen, I predict an immediate motion of no confidence will be pushed by the opposition. However, I do not expect it to be carried. The real point of crisis will come on parliamentary approval for the final deal when it comes. I cannot currently see any circumstances in which the Prime Minister can win that vote, because whatever is contained in the final deal will be voted down by pro-European parties such as ourselves, because it will entail leaving our 2 key economic frameworks. Whatever Theresa May brings forward can't possibly unite your Ian Duncan Smiths and Anna Soubry's. The ambiguity of Labour's position means that they will be able to vote it down for purely selfish reasons. The great party of the proletariat is usually putting narrow, selfish political considerations before people's jobs and wages. If the final deal was not endorsed by the House of Commons, then I cannot see how the British government could survive a confidence vote, meaning that unless an alternative government is formed within 14 days, we are in general election territory. The great irony, of course, is that a Labour British government would more or less pursue the same Brexit policy as the Tories. When it boils down to it, the only difference between Jacob Rees-Mogg and Jeremy Corbyn on Brexit is that one dresses in double-breasted pinstripe suits and one's got a beard and wears sandals. Whilst Westminster is consumed by Brexit and the Unionist parties tear themselves to shreds, some of the major challenges that faces us are completely neglected. How do we provide a sustainable health and social care system in response to an ageing population? How do we provide secure, meaningful work for people in the age of automation and the rise of the machines? And how do we tackle the threats posed to humanity by global warming? History will not reflect too kindly on the political class obsessed with the self-destruction caused by Brexit when these major challenges are facing us today. We are living in an age of seismic political change, and as a party we have to act now to defend our national interest. This needs to be the core of our political message. We must offer a simple choice for the people of Wales, a choice between the ever-increasing subordinate status which awaits our country under the unionist parties, or a confident Wales with the political powers necessary to promote and protect our national interest. A new partnership of sovereign entities, be that within a British state framework or outside. The strategy of hoping for answers from Westminster has failed, and instead of waiting for salvation, the only way is to demand the tools to do the job ourselves. If the British government forces Wales outside of the single market and the customs union, then we must demand full control over vital job creation levers such as sales tax, corporation tax, air passenger duty and full income tax powers. Outside the single market, there would be no excuse for the British government to hold on to these powers. We must demand that responsibility for transport infrastructure is devolved so that the scandal whereby Wales is denied our fair share from England-only rail projects such as HS2 is ended. Why should Welsh taxpayers subsidise such grandiose rail projects in England when the British government won't even electrify the line between our two main largest cities, and where Welsh citizens cannot travel between the north and south of their own country on rail without leaving Wales? Our share from this one project alone would enable us to transform our disgraceful transport infrastructure, such as electrifying existing lines and reopening the Carmarthen to Aberystwyth railway line. Instead of the sticking plaster approach to Welsh public funding employed by the current British government with their Barnett flow, we need full parity between the funding entitlements of the constituent parts of the British state. Spending in Northern Ireland is over £11,000 a head, £10,000, £651 rather in Scotland, and only £10,000.76 in Wales. Funding per head is even higher in London, the richest part of Europe by a country mile. A key element of our manifesto, in my view, for any snap election would be the formation of an arm's-length funding and taxation body, answerable to the four governments of the state to determine fair funding allocations and arbitrate between taxation disputes as the UK becomes more fiscally decentralised. This would remove another unionist argument of a race to the bottom. Moving on to my portfolio of defence, I would urge the party to vigorously promote the policy of home-basing Welsh regiments, primarily to improve the well-being of Welsh soldiers after service. It is the policy of the British government to invest in post-service medical centres at regimental bases. This means that currently former Welsh soldiers requiring care and treatment have to travel many miles from home, which is not conducive to good medical outcomes, especially for those suffering from mental health injury. Furthermore, as the Welsh Government is responsible for funding the formative education of service personnel and in providing public service support after active duty, it is my firm belief that the British Government should not be able to declare war and put our sons and daughters' lives in danger without the endorsement of our National Assembly. This collective decision-making across the British state would remove British jingoism from the political decisions and lead to a defence policy based on security instead of the aggressive misadventures that have failed so spectacularly in the past. In my last portfolio of foreign policy, we must continue to highlight the pure hypocrisy of British government policy. In Syria, in a hugely complex, multifaceted conflict, it has been the policy of the UK to support Kurdish People's Protection and Women's Protection Units and Peshmerga forces to lead the ground offensive against Daesh. Their heroic endeavours have been incredibly successful. Yet now, following their victory in the northeast of Syria, the British government is turning a blind eye to a similarly brutal act of aggression against the same Kurdish forces by NATO ally Turkey in Afrin province. According to the British government, apparently now the Kurds are terrorists, and Turkey has a legitimate security reason for their aggression. Surely this shameful duplicity has nothing to do with the recent £100 million deal between the Turkish government and British arms exporters for jet fighters. Across the world, the British state is becoming the last resort arms dealer for despotic regimes. Arms exporters have just secured a £5 billion deal with Saudi Arabia for the sale of 48 Typhoon jets, despite its despicable involvement in the war in Yemen. What's worse is that Brexit could lead to more of this atrocious behaviour. I have been warning for some time about BAE Systems using subsidiaries to sell surveillance equipment to Saudi Arabia under the radar. The European Commission has since introduced proposals for harsher controls on spyware, but the UK has failed to sign up and no doubt will avoid doing so. This brings me to the last of my snap election policy pledges. We will stop this arming of tyrants and global bullies with a track record of committing human rights abuses. Elsewhere, I greatly fear we are entering a very dangerous phase in international relations where the post-Cold War order may quickly evaporate. Unless we are very careful, the world could quickly spiral into a second Cold War as the rhetoric between the US, Russia and China explodes into another dangerous arms race. In the US, their nuclear posture review proposes to lower the threshold at which a nuclear response is authorised, as well as morphing conventional weaponry to include nuclear technology. In his State of Nation address earlier this month, Putin pledged to respond by advancing their nuclear capability and introduce new invincible nukes to their arsenal. China, meanwhile, earlier this month announced an incredible 8% increase in weapons expenditure to an eye-watering £125 billion per annum in response to what they see as US aggression in the South China Sea. At the same time as heightened tensions with Russia, UK weapons-grade depleted uranium exports have shot up by over 255% since 2012, with Russia the destination for well over 90% of all material. The British establishment has always been the global masters in hypocrisy. History teaches us that escalation of this sort does not end well. I would argue that the best defence strategy for the British government, especially considering the comparative size of the armed forces, would be to play whatever role it could in de-escalating the situation. I would urge them to redesign the defence portfolio to address the very real threats we face, namely Daesh-sponsored terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism and cyber security. I'd like to close by pleading with the party not to respond to the electoral challenges we face from Corbyn's Labour by basing our political strategy on the intricacies of socialist theory. I fear that road leads to political oblivion. In the face of an increasingly insular, hostile, right-wing, centralist Tory party and a hard-left, anti-Western, statist, command and control Labour Party, we have to aim for the gaping void in the middle. This does not mean abandoning our principles as a party, but prioritising our economic, environmental, internationalist and law and justice credentials. Did you know, for instance, that devolving policing would instantly lead to a £25 million boost for Welsh policing every year and end the Westminster cuts to vital services like our former helicopter in Dyfed Powys? One of my favourite truisms in politics is, shape events or they will shape you. We can't afford to wait for the political stars to align before striking. We have to create the perfect storm ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So let us work together and build our vision for our country. Let us unite and take the fight to our unionist opponents. More importantly, let us win for Wales. Diolch yn fawr iawn.